I never thought my life would turn upside down during a simple family gathering. 8 years of marriage to Sarah, filled with trust and love, suddenly felt like a lie. That evening at our home, as we welcomed my cousin Brian and his wife Amanda for dinner, I noticed something strange in the way Sarah laughed at his jokes and how their eyes lingered. A tiny seed of doubt planted itself in my heart, though I tried to ignore it. Little did I know this seed would grow into a truth that would shatter everything I believed about my marriage. Before I continue this story that changed my life forever, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit that subscribe button and like if you want to hear how I discovered my wife's betrayal and found happiness in the most unexpected place. Sarah and I had what I thought was a perfect marriage for the first 6 years. We met at a summer music festival in Chicago when we were both 24. I still remember how beautiful she looked in her white sundress, swaying to the music with her long brown hair catching the sunlight. After bumping into each other 3 times that day, I finally worked up the courage to ask for her number. 3 years of dating later, we had our dream wedding at her parents' lakeside property in Wisconsin. Our wedding day remains one of my happiest memories. Sarah walked down the aisle in a stunning gown that made my heart stop. We danced under the stars that night, making plans for our future together. We talked about having 2 children, buying a bigger house in the suburbs, and growing old side by side. Everyone commented on how perfect we were for each other, how our love seemed unshakable. Brian had always been more than just my cousin. Growing up, we were inseparable, spending countless summers fishing at our grandparents' lake house and attending the same summer camps. Even as adults, we remained close despite his tendency to compete with me in subtle ways. When he married Amanda 7 years ago, our families became even more intertwined. We spent holidays together, celebrated birthdays, and had weekend barbecues that became our tradition. Amanda was different from Sarah in many ways. While Sarah was outgoing and the life of every party, Amanda was more reserved and thoughtful. She had built an impressive career as an architect and always had interesting perspectives on everything. I admired her intelligence and quiet confidence. She seemed to balance Brian, perfectly tempering his sometimes impulsive nature with her careful consideration. Our lives seemed picture-perfect until small changes began appearing in Sarah's behavior. She started working late more often, sometimes not coming home until after 10 at night, claiming big projects at her marketing firm. Her phone, once casually left around the house, became permanently attached to her hand, and she changed all her passwords. When I asked about it casually, she mentioned something about a work security protocol, but the explanation felt hollow. At a family birthday celebration for my mother, I noticed Sarah and Brian disappearing for almost 30 minutes. When they returned separately, Brian mentioned they had been discussing a surprise anniversary gift for me, but something in his smile didn't seem right. Later that evening, I saw a notification flash across Sarah's phone from someone named B with a heart emoji. When I asked who B was, she quickly said it was her new colleague, Brittany. Sarah began critiquing everything about me, from my cooking to my clothing choices. One evening, she complained about the blue sweater I had worn to dinner, the same sweater she had given me for Christmas just months before. These small criticisms accumulated, creating an uncomfortable atmosphere in our once happy home. During a couple's night out, Amanda pulled me aside while Brian and Sarah were ordering drinks at the bar. With concern in her eyes, she asked if everything was okay between Sarah and me. When I assured her things were fine, she nodded but didn't seem convinced. Looking back, I wonder if she already suspected something was happening. The final straw, in this first phase of suspicion, came when Sarah started receiving expensive gifts she couldn't explain. A new designer watch appeared on her wrist, and when I asked about it, she vaguely mentioned a bonus at work. But something about her explanation felt off, especially since I knew her company was going through budget cuts. I tried to reignite our connection by planning special date nights and surprising her with small gifts, but she seemed distant and uninterested. My efforts to improve our relationship were met with lukewarm responses or outright rejection. The woman I married seemed to be slipping away, and I couldn't understand why. The truth began unraveling when Sarah told me she needed to attend a weekend business conference in Detroit. I offered to drive her to the airport, but she insisted on taking a taxi. That night, I received a call from my colleague Jack, who had seen Sarah at a restaurant downtown, not on a plane to Detroit. My stomach dropped as I realized she had lied to me, but I wasn't ready to confront her yet. I needed more information. I did something I never thought I would do. I checked our phone records and discovered dozens of calls to and from Brian's number, some lasting over an hour, often made during times Sarah claimed to be in meetings. Many calls happened late at night when she said she was working late at the office. The evidence was mounting, but I still couldn't believe my wife and my cousin would betray me like this. The final confirmation came when Sarah left her phone unlocked while she took a shower one morning. Fighting against my better judgment, I looked at her messages. What I found shattered my heart into a million pieces. There were intimate exchanges between her and Brian, dating back 14 months, plans for secret meetings, and worse, discussions about their future together. They had been carrying on this affair right under my nose during family gatherings, holiday celebrations, and even in my own home. I spent the next week in emotional turmoil, unable to sleep or eat properly. I lost 12 pounds in 10 days, and my coworkers commented on how exhausted I looked. Every night I lay awake wondering how the two people I trusted most could do this to me. My mind replayed every interaction, every family gathering, every suspicious moment I had dismissed. After careful planning, I decided to follow Sarah one Thursday evening when she said she was meeting clients. I watched from my car as she drove to the Harborview Hotel and met Brian in the restaurant. Through the large windows, I could see them holding hands across the table, leaning in for intimate conversations. When they kissed, I felt physically sick. 8 years of marriage meant nothing to her. My investigation didn't stop there. I discovered they had created secret email accounts to communicate and had been planning weekend getaways under the guise of business trips or fishing expeditions. The affair had been methodically planned and executed with complete disregard for Amanda or me. One evening, my phone rang with an unknown number. It was Amanda. In a calm but shaky voice, she asked if we could meet for coffee. The next day, sitting across from her at a quiet corner table, she revealed she had also been suspecting something for months. She had found hotel receipts in Brian's jacket, noticed missing money from their joint account, and caught him in numerous lies. That coffee meeting turned into a 3-hour conversation where we pieced together the timeline of the affair. Amanda had noticed Brian becoming emotionally distant about 15 months ago, around the same time I started seeing changes in Sarah. She showed me text messages she had found that, while not explicit, were clearly suspicious. We realized our spouses had been coordinating their lies, creating alibis for each other, and fooling us both. The more Amanda and I talked, the angrier I became. This wasn't just about the infidelity. It was about the calculated deception. They had made fools of us at family events, probably laughing behind our backs at how oblivious we were. I remembered family dinners where Brian had raised a toast to friendship and loyalty, all while sleeping with my wife. The stress took a physical toll on me. Besides the weight loss, I developed insomnia and anxiety attacks. My doctor prescribed medication to help me sleep, but nothing could ease the constant ache in my chest. I felt like I was living in a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. The cousin who had been like a brother, and the woman I thought I would grow old with, had destroyed everything I believed about love and family. The confrontation with Sarah happened on a Tuesday night. She came home late, smelling of expensive perfume and wine. I was sitting in the dark living room waiting. When she turned on the lights and saw me, she jumped. I still remember the look on her face, the momentary flash of fear before she composed herself. I calmly asked her where she had been. She gave her rehearsed answer about client meetings running late. Without saying a word, I placed my phone on the coffee table and played the recording I had made earlier that evening of her and Brian in the hotel restaurant. The color drained from her face as she heard their voices, their intimate conversation impossible to explain away. Her denial lasted only seconds before turning to anger. Somehow in her mind, this was all my fault. She claimed I had been emotionally unavailable too, focused on my career, not attentive enough to her needs. According to Sarah, Brian understood her in ways I never could. Each accusation felt like a knife twisting in my heart. 8 years of marriage, reduced to a list of my supposed failures. The confrontation with Brian was even worse. I drove to his house the next day, knowing Sarah had already warned him. He opened the door with Amanda standing anxiously behind him. For a moment, we just stared at each other, 30 years of friendship hanging in the balance. He tried to deny everything at first, but when I mentioned the specific dates and places I knew about, his facade crumbled. What hurt the most was his justification. He claimed they had fallen in love, that it wasn't just a physical affair, but something deeper. He had the audacity to ask for my understanding, even my blessing. In that moment, looking at the man who had been like a brother to me, I felt nothing but disgust. I turned to leave, but not before telling Amanda everything I knew, dates and locations included. The family gathering that weekend was unbearable. No one else knew yet, but the four of us sat around my parents' dinner table pretending everything was normal. I watched Sarah laugh at my father's jokes, and Brian helped my mother clear the dishes, all while carrying this devastating secret. Amanda and I exchanged glances across the table, our shared knowledge forming an unspoken bond between us. The most devastating discovery came when I accessed Sarah's email account using a password she had shared with me years ago and never changed. There I found messages between her and Brian discussing their future plans. They had been considering moving to Boston together, far from our families and the judgmental eyes of relatives. Worse were the messages where they mocked me, my naivety, my blind trust. Sarah had shared intimate details about our marriage, our private moments reduced to jokes between lovers. When the affair finally became known to our families, the reactions were mixed. My parents were devastated, not just for me, but for the fracture in the family. Sarah's parents surprisingly seemed more concerned about how this would affect their social standing than their daughter's morality. Brian's parents, my aunt and uncle, called me personally to apologize for their son's behavior, their voices heavy with shame. The breakdown happened one night in my car. I had left my parents' house after a tense discussion about the upcoming holidays and who would be invited where. Sitting in the parking lot of a closed supermarket, I finally allowed myself to feel everything I had been suppressing. I screamed until my voice gave out, pounded the steering wheel until my hands hurt, and cried for what I had lost. Not just my marriage, but my trust in people, my sense of family, and my vision of the future. I moved into my friend David's spare bedroom the next day, unable to sleep in the bed I had shared with Sarah. The simple act of packing my clothes was surreal, ending 8 years of marriage by filling 2 suitcases with whatever I could grab. Sarah watched silently from the doorway, perhaps finally realizing the consequences of her actions. Brian called me repeatedly that week, leaving voicemails filled with apologies and explanations. I deleted each one without listening to the end. No explanation could undo what had been done, no apology could rebuild the trust that had been shattered. The turning point came when I hired Lisa Richards, one of the top divorce attorneys in the state. Sarah had expected me to try reconciliation to fight for our marriage. My decisive move to end things shocked her. Lisa was brilliant, methodically building a case that documented the infidelity and protected my assets. For the first time since discovering the affair, I felt a sense of control. Filing for divorce was surprisingly liberating. The legal process gave structure to the chaos of my emotions. Lisa guided me through the division of assets, ensuring that Sarah's betrayal wouldn't also leave me financially devastated. We had purchased our home primarily with money I had inherited from my grandmother, and Lisa made sure that was taken into account. During this time, Amanda and I began meeting regularly. What started as strategy sessions about the divorces evolved into deeper conversations. She revealed that Brian had cheated early in their marriage with a coworker, something she had forgiven. This affair with Sarah was the final straw for her. I admired her strength and resilience in the face of repeated betrayal. The confrontation with Brian at the family Easter dinner was not planned. He approached me as I was helping my mother in the kitchen, attempting yet another apology. Something in me snapped. In front of my parents, aunts, uncles, and cousins, I laid out exactly what he and Sarah had done, the duration of their affair, and their plans to leave together. The silence that followed was deafening. Brian left without saying another word, and no one tried to stop him. The public exposure of the affair changed everything. Family members were forced to choose sides, and to my surprise, most supported me. Even Brian's sister called to tell me she was disgusted by her brother's behavior. Sarah's attempts to paint herself as the victim fell flat when faced with the evidence of her deception. As the divorce proceedings continued, I focused on rebuilding my life. I found a small apartment closer to my office, threw myself into a big project at work, and started running every morning. Physical exhaustion was the only thing that helped me sleep at night. I deleted my social media accounts to avoid the pitying messages and curious questions, choosing instead to reconnect with a few close friends who had stood by me. Amanda and I started attending a support group for people going through divorces due to infidelity. Sitting in a circle of strangers who understood exactly what we were experiencing was surprisingly comforting. After each session, we would go for coffee and process what we had heard, sometimes talking until the cafe closed. Our regular coffee meetings became dinner, then weekend hikes, then movie nights. We found comfort in each other's company, understanding the unique pain we both carried. Amanda was different from anyone I had ever known, thoughtful and direct, with a quiet sense of humor that emerged as she began to heal. She challenged my thinking, encouraged my career ambitions, and never treated me with the pity I saw in other people's eyes. I remember the exact moment I realized my feelings for Amanda had become something more. We were walking through the botanical gardens talking about our childhood dreams when she laughed at something I said. The sound of her laughter made my heart skip in a way it hadn't in years. I found myself watching her as she examined a particularly beautiful orchid, wondering if she could ever see me as more than a fellow survivor. 3 months after that day in the gardens over dinner at her favorite Italian restaurant, I took a chance and asked if she would consider going on a real date, not just as friends sharing divorce stories. Her smile gave me the answer before she spoke. We agreed to take things slowly, both still healing from our respective betrayals, but for the first time since discovering Sarah's affair, I felt hopeful about the future. The decision to start dating officially, despite the potential family drama, was mutual. We knew people would talk, that Brian and Sarah would likely be furious, but we refused to let their betrayal dictate our chance at happiness. That night, as I drove home from our first official date, I felt a sense of power I hadn't experienced in months. I was taking back control of my life, making choices based on what I wanted, not in reaction to what had been done to me. 6 months after filing for divorce, my life had transformed in ways I never could have imagined. The promotion I had been working toward for 2 years finally came through, partly because of the impressive work I had done on the Henderson project during those sleepless post-discovery nights. My new apartment had become a home decorated with artwork I actually liked, not the generic prints Sarah had always preferred. My healing journey was neither quick nor linear. There were still nights when I woke up, angry days when a random memory would plunge me back into sadness. The therapy sessions Dr. Martinez recommended helped me process these emotions without being consumed by them. She taught me meditation techniques that calmed my racing thoughts and suggested running as a way to release physical tension. The 5 miles I ran each morning became a moving meditation, a time to clear my head before facing the day. My relationship with Amanda developed naturally, built on a foundation of shared experience and genuine understanding. Unlike my relationship with Sarah, which had been passionate but sometimes superficial, Amanda and I connected on a deeper level. We talked about everything from childhood traumas to future dreams. She understood my trust issues because she had them too. Together, we established patterns of honesty and transparency that felt healing rather than restrictive. The news of our relationship reached Brian and Sarah exactly as we expected, with explosive results. Sarah called me in tears, accusing me of dating Amanda purely out of revenge. Brian sent a series of angry texts calling me every name imaginable. Their reaction confirmed what Amanda and I had suspected all along. They had never considered how their actions affected us, only how our responses impacted them. 4 months into our relationship, Amanda and I accidentally ran into Sarah and Brian at a restaurant downtown. They had apparently reconciled after their respective divorces were finalized, something neither of us had known. The 4 of us stood frozen in the entryway, other diners glancing curiously at the palpable tension. I felt Amanda's hand slip into mine, a silent show of support. Without saying a word to them, we asked for a table in a different section and enjoyed our evening, refusing to let their presence ruin our date. Walking away from that encounter, I realized I no longer felt the burning hatred that had consumed me for so long. There was a quiet vindication in seeing them together, knowing they now had to live with the foundation of betrayal they had built. But more importantly, I felt indifferent to their relationship status. They no longer held power over my emotions. With Amanda, I was learning what a truly healthy relationship looked like. We communicated openly about our needs and fears. When jealousy or insecurity arose, as it inevitably did given our history, we addressed it directly rather than letting it fester. We built trust, slowly earning it through consistent actions rather than empty promises. Each day I discovered new aspects of her personality that I admired: her creativity, her patience, her ability to find humor in difficult situations. Our families had mixed reactions to our relationship. My parents, after initial concerns about the complexity of the situation, grew to love Amanda. They saw how happy she made me, and that was all that mattered to them. Her parents, who lived in Oregon, were more hesitant, concerned their daughter was jumping from one relationship to another too quickly. A weekend visit to meet them changed their minds. Amanda's mother later told her she had never seen her daughter so at ease with anyone before. 8 months after our first official date, Brian reached out again, asking to meet in person. Against Amanda's better judgment, I agreed to hear him out. At a neutral coffee shop, he offered what seemed like a genuine apology, acknowledging the pain he had caused not just to me, but to our entire family. He spoke about therapy and the work he was doing to understand his destructive patterns. While I appreciated his efforts, I made it clear that forgiveness did not mean restoration. Some bridges once burned cannot be rebuilt. This conversation was pivotal in my healing process. I realized that forgiveness was not about excusing what had been done to me, but about freeing myself from the burden of hatred. I could acknowledge Brian's humanity, his capacity for both terrible mistakes and genuine remorse, without allowing him back into my life. This realization extended to Sarah as well. I no longer needed to demonize her to justify my pain. For our 1-year dating anniversary, I took Amanda to Sedona, a place she had always wanted to visit. Watching the sunset paint the red rocks in brilliant oranges and pinks, I found myself planning a future with her. Not out of fear of being alone, or the desire to replace what I had lost, but because of who she was and how we fit together. That night under the stars, we talked about marriage as a possibility, not an immediate plan, but a path we might choose to walk together when the time felt right. 2 weeks after returning from Sedona, I went ring shopping with my mother. The diamond I chose was different from what I had given Sarah years ago, just as my love for Amanda was different, more mature, built on shared resilience rather than youthful passion. I planned to propose on her birthday, still 2 months away, giving us both the gift of time and certainty. The most profound lesson I learned through this painful journey was about truth. Not just the importance of honesty between partners, but the truth of who I am and what I deserve. The affair forced me to confront painful realities about my marriage and my cousin, but it also revealed strengths within myself I never knew existed. I learned that loyalty cannot be demanded, only freely given by those who truly value you. I also discovered that pain, while inevitable in life, does not have to define us. It can break us open, yes, but what grows from that brokenness is our choice. I chose to build a life based on authentic connections, clear boundaries, and self-respect. The betrayal that once seemed like the end of everything became surprisingly the beginning of something genuine and enduring. Life takes unexpected turns. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you leads to the best. I never would have chosen this path, never would have wished for the pain of betrayal, but standing on the other side, I can see how it led me to where I needed to be. Sometimes the hardest endings make way for the most beautiful beginnings. What would you have done in my situation? Would you have found the strength to start over? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button. And subscribe for more real-life experiences. Your support means everything as we all navigate life's unexpected journeys together. Thank you for listening to my story. And remember that even after the darkest betrayal, new love and happiness can find their way back to you when you least expect it.